Hi, welcome. On this video, I'm going to talk about the issue of um, identity, and again, talk about the dog training world is suffering from a type of identity crisis, and I talk about even in terms at a spiritual level. Okay, and again, a video just put up by Top Dog Canine, trying to come up against my faith. Okay, talking about God, some type of anti-God, narrative in the dog training community, which I find very interesting because you get in this whole issue about behavioralism, okay, and it's no accident you see a lot of these individuals out there that are hardcore atheists, but very angry, okay, and so again, I talk about dogs, in terms of what makes dogs amazing, um, depth of relationship, nature, okay, and really even this issue happened in the dog training world. I talk about appearances, okay. I talk about lack of depth. I talk about what this idea of things, what it represents. It's very much that the core issue at a spiritual level. It's idolatry. Okay, so understand when this issue comes up, you see this type of anti-God messaging. You see a lot of these trainers who have no problem talking about what they worship, okay, what they believe in, because even I say about being atheist still requires belief, okay, and see someone like Hines, keep posting about Skinner, type of God to him. So understand if you're not going to worship, I talk about Jesus, I talk about God, you're going to worship something. Okay, it's going to be your identity is going to be twisted up in something. It's going to be money, sex, drugs. It's going to because we're made in the image of God. We're made to worship. So there's going to be something that we're going to be worshiping. And this whole issue when I talk about the dog training community, dogs, the issue about idolatry, it comes down to the issue about self. It's like, example of like the golden calf. It really is. I mean, this whole issue. So this is why dogs, again, you get to this issue about why dogs are given up on, destroyed. Dogs are devalued because the value of that dogs hold through this issue of idolatry only extends as far as self. Right? So the dogs can't meet my emotional needs, my needs, me. Well, they're out of here. Okay? And people don't want to talk about the motives of that, right? They want to get real with that, with what's really going on here, and this is why you're seeing all I talk about collateral damage. So understand there's a spiritual aspect here as it relates to our relationship with our pets. There really is, and there's no accident or coincidence that you see these things popping up in the dog training world, where you see these trainers are trying to attack at all levels because they don't want that idol pulled down. Okay, and that's really what it is. So if you're a Christian, you should pay attention. You should be paying attention to what's really going on here in the dog training world. Even you get a lot of these people that are so focused on their animals, it should be about people, right? There's an order of things, but there was like a survey. If you had a choice between saving a person drowning and a dog, I think like a high percentage would save the dog first. Now, don't get me wrong. We should care for our dogs, and we should, we're supposed to care for animals, be good stewards. But this is all twisted up. This is like the type of identity crisis happening, and you're seeing it in the dog training community. But here I find it very interesting because here DeVos does speak about his faith. So understand this video isn't meant to be an attack on anyone, okay? One of the things I go into the dog training community, understand that when you deal with this issue of, and that's what I call what's going on in the dog training community, it's a stronghold. Okay, you get this issue about idolatry. It's like, watch out. Okay, why do you think people get so angry when you get this? I've received death threats from balanced dog trainers over in the UK. Why would people get that upset over this issue? Well, understand there's more going on here. Okay, I mean, there's more going on here. Um, so again, if you're a Christian, pay attention because we're not supposed to be twisted up. Our identities aren't supposed to be twisted up that way in terms of pets. Okay, yes, we're supposed to be good, but it's the order, getting the order right. God first, right? Spouse, children, animals. See, people got the order wrong. When you get the order wrong, it brings on this. You get turned over to it. There's a turning. Understand the point is there's a turning over, and so this is where we're at. There's a turning over to this issue, okay, in the dog training community, even with those who profess to be Christians, okay. I'll talk about this. Now here we're going to go through because I want to just show some comments here. So because this is relates to what I'm saying here in this whole situation with Robert Hines, angry, upset, right? Brings up this whole issue about the Bible and God. But again, this is a identity issue here. Understand this is what it comes down to. Because if this is about science, right, we should be able to, right, confront what the problems are. I talk about that. I keep talking about why this isn't science, the way this is about a issue of identity, okay, in the dog training community, because you're dealing with depth of relationship, okay, how we connect at that level. So this triggers off all of this. So here, I'm going to read some of these comments because this shows you here, so this whole thing bottomed out, okay, between, this is a public video, this is a public comments, and then this just happened here recently. So here, this came from the comment from the video here. It says, I know we should get, this is just another kind of third person here, you know, kind of getting this all triggered off here. It says, I know we shouldn't get too carried away and amplify moralizing things, okay, but if the anchor were to have a name, I feel it would be Robert. Okay, so it goes on here, and this is the bottoming out between Hines and DeBose. Makes it pretty clear, doesn't it? I just addressed all this in the video. I'm not your enemy, Mark. Like, okay, where'd that come from? Okay, this obviously got the whole ball rolling here, where they're going to have it out publicly. DeBose responds to Robert Hines, 500 or more emails last year between us, a dozen video calls or so. Yeah, they're all like tied right in. Talk about my Bible every week in all my videos since we first started to talk. Me giving thanks to you personally in email and publicly more times than I can count. View you as my enemy. What changed overnight? That now all of a sudden I hate non-believers because of my Bible. So yeah, this is very interesting here because here's the thing. I talk about this. Talk about the intolerance part, right? So as Christians, right? This is the thing about loving. Even though it's very hard to say, go look what's happening. Go in the dog training community. If you're dealing with a stronghold issue about idolatry, okay, you're going to get attacked at all levels because you're messing with people's identity. That's what's really going on here in the dog training world. You're messing with, if you're going to mess with my identity, I'm going to mess with you. That's really what's going on. These people have their identities twisted up, okay, with dogs this way, which shouldn't be happening. And, you know, and then you're seeing this type of anger and divisiveness. I understand, because then you say, well, is this really about right relationship? Is this really about getting the order right here? No, the order's all twisted. So this is why you get these individuals, because if I identify a certain way and I'm going into the dog training, you know, world this way, well, it's going to be a problem. Okay, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And so here, when you talk about, you know, the Christian response, right, to this world and to other people, and even people struggling in certain identity issues, you know, if you're secure in your identity through Christ, then you're not going to be necessarily in conflict, like direct conflict with people that way. You know, you're not going to be on the attack that way. And that's why I say, for me, that's why people wonder why I've taken down my videos at times, why my response, because you're dealing with a stronghold situation, you're dealing with a identity crisis situation, you're dealing with idolatry at its core. And so, you know, it's, you know, and it becomes a stronghold in a way in which you don't have, you know, you go in there like that, prepare yourself, you know, and this is why it's a hard walk, say, as a Christian. Now, if you're a Christian suffering from an identity crisis and you're in this whole idolatry situation, that's why I say you need to give yourself ask some serious questions as to what you're doing. Okay, I'll just leave it there for people, because understand that this is not, these things are happening. I think, of course, God's meant to get people's attention here, but getting back to this thing about, the boast is saying, hey, listen, I've come alongside you here, and I've shown you friendship, and I've shown you all this thing, and why are you saying this stuff about, that Christians want you destroyed? And see, that's the thing. This is how this thing about how they see it, all right? Because I talk about no critical thinking is they don't. It's this convoluted thing. It's this type of intolerance, and you see that in the world. You see this. This is why sooner or later, if you're a Christian, you might be comfortable, but sooner or later you're going to be put in a position, because that's what God promises. Okay, look at what happened to Jesus. Look at his disciples. It's gonna happen. It doesn't mean that you're looking for it, but that's the spiritual aspect of all this. Okay, sooner or later you're gonna get it. You're gonna because it's a spiritual issue. It's about identity, and so you're gonna get attacked. Sooner or later, that's just gonna happen. That's the way God promised that. He said, if the world hates me, the world's gonna hate you. And you don't have to do anything. Okay, you just have to identify with Christ and trust me. Sooner or later, you're going to be put in that position. Okay, now if you go into the dog training world, prepare yourself. But if you're not secure in your identity with Christ in terms of really being aligned that way, then I would question the fact that you're part of this. Okay, that you're advocating this ideology, that you're part, because it's idolatry. So, it's like getting the order right here. Okay, so, but here you get the boast questioning, hey, hold on here a second. Why are you saying all these things after I've done all this for you? And I've said that. Behavioralism, you look at, it's anti-God. So sooner or later, it's going to bottom out. Okay? He said, you change. Your emails to me change. You start to get nasty with me. Yeah, that's how it works. Because look at Heinz. This isn't just understand me just going after Heinz personally, okay? It's, you look at people who are hardcore atheists, there's some anger there somewhere about, and if you get into the real issue, it's always about they're angry against God for some reason, you know. And that's a conversation to have, I guess, but people have to be open to getting to that core issue, like what's really going on here. Start telling me what to do. If I didn't, you would get meaner and nastier. It has nothing to do with my Bible, but that's the one thing. And so again, yeah, you talk about Heinz talking about the Bible, everything out of context. All right, just like going into this issue about what represents. I talk about process and everything out of context. That's why all these trainers are doing. That's why all these individuals are doing, right? Because it's like they're looking through a certain lens, and they're totally, they're not going to go there. Okay, this is because you're messing with their identity. You start to put people in a corner. This is why all the lashing out, because it's like saying, hey, what's the real motive? What's really going on here? What's this agenda? I said this is like the big lie in the dog training world that trains a learning based. Yeah, it's a big lie. And then look all the collateral damage. And then why don't these people want to deal with, get real about this? What's really going on? Because their identity, they're suffering from an identity crisis. That's exactly what's happened, right? Because and then they'll try to distract. They'll do anything to try to shove it off, to try to not deal with it, right? Personal. That's why I see all the personal attacks, all this stuff happening. Oh, I think that's all. It's nothing to do with dogs. Just do with them. That's the one thing you're trying to. I'm thinking of your response from others, trying to use my word backwards, trying to destroy me, threaten and talk so bad I have no cares to even think to say anything, pass this message back to you. I forgive you. I'm not mad at you for what you've done. I hope the best for you, but I can't align myself anymore with someone that gets mad because I put a boundary in place to keep myself safe. Yeah, that's what it is. My channel is my journey. My journey is the Bible. I think that's great. I mean, here's the thing. Even if you guys put up with the boast, it's okay. You talk about your journey. That's great, the boast. But you start to, advocate this, and this is why I talk about the identity crisis, even with people identify as Christians. Understand what's going on here. Like, this is an example of it right here. I don't think a lot of, people need to really audit what's happening, okay? This is a identity issue, okay? This is an idolatry issue. I call it idolatry identity crisis, okay? This is what's going on. I'm here to help people. I'm not the church about giving people their power back. Well, what's that mean? Okay, I would question. That's why I even questioned devotion when he's talking about as a Christian. I would question them. I sit down and have a conversation with them about as a Christian about this whole issue in the dog training world. Um, here's Hines. We had a lot of great talks, but every time I mention the word Bible, it's a video I refuse to finish. See, well, why? You know, it's just the same thing. It's just like, um, it's angry. You're losing subs due to your beliefs. See, this is where they'll go. You're losing subs to your beliefs. I lose lots of people because of talking as a Christian, right? But my identity be through Christ. But I'm at the same time. I mean, look at the information I'm putting. It's specific. It's nothing. You can separate the two. The two you can separate it. Okay, the information. This is where you get these you go into the issues of you know atheists who talk about evolution and all this stuff. It's the same. You see the same stuff there. You know, it's almost like trying to say, well, if you believe in God, then you're stupid or you're not intelligent, right? This is really what they're trying to say. That's completely ridiculous. You go look at some of the individuals that and you see more and more of it as science opens up, even in terms of a cell. The more science reveals, just like DNA, you get into the coding, you go into just the type of engineering involved in operations of certain mechanisms of cell structure and all this stuff. It's like, look at it and say, no, this is like there's intelligent design behind it. It's like getting worse for those who are professing. It's getting worse for them to hold on to, say, well, there isn't intelligence behind it. Like, it keeps getting worse. Why do you think that is? It's as soon as you come up against that wall, then you have to say, there's something else. But see, this gets in this whole issue here. It's all about the lost dogs of an ideology belong to the dog world. This is no. See, and I did on the last. If you watch the last part 3 of the podcast between himself and Top Dog Guy, the same guy put up the anti-dog stuff as well. You see, Hines is like he's operating off a whole different formula. He's totally sold out to it. And I'm like, just shaking my head. That's what happens. There's a turning over because understand with dogs, there's stuff there. I even talk about the aspect of the human dynamic. Okay, takes trainers' legs out. Because they're not focused. They can't connect the dots that way. Because here's the thing is, and I'll be clear, in order at the point of a lot of these trainers, in order to understand what I'm saying and to gain insight into what I'm saying, you have to humble yourself. Pride and ego have to let it go. That's it. What's happening in the dog training world is driven by ego, pride, and these individuals are turned over. That's the bottom line. Turned over. And just look at the message. Don't take my word for it. Go through all the controversies. They don't want to talk about any of that. Right? They go through it and they're still promoting this garbage. It's like they're not shaken out of it. So, because that's why I said it's an identity crisis. It's idolatry. I mean, it's really, let's get to the core issue here. Anyway, you can read the rest of this. This is the back and forth part. But this really gets down to this whole thing about what's really going on here. This is a spiritual issue too. This layers up that way, and people can take me for however you want. But I would say if you're professed to be a Christian and you're part of all this in the dog training world, you need to give your head a shake. Understand what's really going on here. Dogs are amazing, but the order has to be right. Right? So many people don't have the order right. That's the real problem here. And so this comes out. Dogs are nature. It opens up to God. Okay, nature. It's that level of connection. Why do you think these issues keep coming up? Do you think that's some sort of accident? But here's the point: I will talk about my faith and identity that way because these individuals, they're on social media talking about all sorts of. There's a top clicker trainer out there. She's very popular. She's a practicing Wiccan. She had a fire dance going on, and I just made a comment and said, "Oh, that's interesting," and she took the video down pretty fast. I was just say, "Oh, that's interesting." See, that's the thing. Like, you don't understand. You're gonna worship something if your identity's tied up into, if you're not aligned through God, through Christ, you're gonna worship something. Money, drugs, sex, you name it. This idolatry through dogs, through the relationship that way. Why do you think all these dogs are being destroyed? Because their value only extends as far as you know, identity through self that way. If the dog, hey, if the dog ain't gonna meet my, if I'm having, hey, they're gone. It isn't about meeting. It isn't about loving another that way. It isn't about extending love that way. Okay, and what that requires in through our role. Okay, through relationship, right relationship. Okay, it's not about meeting the needs of another that way. This is why when you challenge people's identity to true motives here, they get so upset, right? Because they don't want to have that conversation, right? That's the thing. It's like having a real conversation. It's like reality therapy, right? This ain't it, okay? The dog training world's a mess for a reason. So I just want to put it out there. You see this whole bottoming out here. So here you go. Here it is. And then you have, you know, um, you know, uh, that's where we're at. So again, this is a identity crisis happening in the dog training world. This extends far. I understand this layers up that way. This is a spiritual issue. Believe it. And if we want to get to the heart of the matter, that's really what's going on. And the pride and ego, absolutely turned over. There's a turning over at a certain point. When you throw the truth out in the street, sooner or later you're turned over. That's how God allows it. It says, okay, because free will. I mean, you have the will to choose. We all do. So that's where we're at. Thanks for watching.